All right, so you're here because you want to like really get good at researching for all your content,
Yeah.
whether it's, blog posts or scripts for videos or reports,
Right.
whatever it is you're making. I think we've all been there where we just get sucked into the vortex of endless articles
Oh, yeah.
and we just feel like we're drowning in information.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive is all about finding the best, most efficient ways to find good information fast.
Yeah, and it's interesting because effective research can really make or break your content, but I think sometimes people think that it's just about like speed, just getting through it as fast as possible,
Right.
but it's really not. It's about finding the right information and making it useful for whatever you're working on.
Okay, so before we even open up our browsers,
Hmm.
what are we actually trying to learn here? What
Yeah.
questions are we trying to answer?
That's a really good question. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls that I see people falling into is they kind of just dive in without a clear goal in
Yeah.
mind. It's like walking into a maze blindfolded.
Yeah.
You might stumble upon something interesting, but you're probably going to waste a lot of time and energy.
Right. Like you need a map to navigate the jungle of information out there.
Exactly.
And that's where I think that SMART framework comes in, right?
Absolutely. The SMART framework is so helpful, but I think a lot of people think that it's just like this corporate jargon, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So let's break it down and make it really relatable for content creators instead of just saying something like research content marketing trends, which is kind of vague.
Right.
A SMART goal would be something like find 3 case studies of successful video marketing campaigns for SaaS companies launched in the last 6 months.
Wow. Okay. So much more specific.
Exactly.
And I can already see how much that would just streamline everything. Because
Absolutely.
you know exactly what you're looking for. You're not just like randomly clicking on articles and going down these rabbit holes.
Yeah, you're not going to waste time reading stuff that's not
Yeah.
relevant.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so now we have our SMART goals in place. How do we know where to even look for information?
Right.
I mean, how do we pick the sources that are actually going to be valuable?
So think about it like this. You wouldn't just quote like a random forum post in a research paper, right?
Okay.
You'd probably go for like academic journals or books by authors that you respect. And it's the same principle for any kind of research.
Yeah.
You want to look for sources that have been vetted and that you can trust.
So where do we start?
I always recommend starting with official websites, especially government and educational institutions.
Okay.
So .gov and .edu. These websites have to go through pretty rigorous fact-checking processes, so you can be pretty confident that the information is accurate.
That makes sense. What about industry publications?
Yeah, those are great too.
Yeah.
But this is where your critical thinking skills really come in.
Right.
You want to look at the author's credentials, the publication's reputation, and always cross-reference the information.
Okay.
Like, do other reputable sources back up what they're saying? So even within industry publications, there's like a hierarchy
Exactly.
of trust.
Exactly. For example, a blog post by a marketing intern might have some interesting insights,
Yeah.
but I would probably give more weight to an article published in like Journal of Marketing or Harvard Business Review.
Right, because those have been more heavily vetted.
Exactly. And they have a longer track record of accuracy.
And fact-checking websites are our friends here.
Oh, absolutely. Websites like Snopes and factcheck.org,
Yeah.
they can be super helpful, especially when you're dealing with claims that seem too good to be true.
Right. Or that just make you feel a certain way.
Yeah, or that are particularly controversial. Remember, misinformation can spread really quickly online, so it's always better to double check.
Okay, so we've got our SMART goals.
Yeah.
We're checking our sources, making sure that we're going to those trustworthy websites.
Right.
But then how do we actually like sift through the information?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the part where I get bogged down.
Yeah, it can be really overwhelming.
Because even if it's from a good source, I don't have time to read like every word of every article that I find.
I completely agree. Time is precious, and that's why it's so important to learn how to skim effectively.
Okay.
Think of it like panning for gold.
Mhm.
You're not trying to pick up every single rock, right? You're looking for those little glimmers that tell you there's something valuable there.
So how do we get good at skimming?
Well, it's all about knowing where to look. Look for headings, subheadings, bullet points. Those are your signposts. They're going to guide you to the most important information.
So it's almost like reading with a filter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're actively looking for the key points that are relevant to your research goals.
And not being afraid to skip entire sections.
Exactly. If it doesn't seem relevant, just move on.
Okay, so let's say we've skimmed through and we found those golden nuggets. How do we keep track of them?
Right.
Because I always start out with good intentions and then I end up with like, 12 different notebooks and sticky notes and
Oh, yeah. I totally get it. I used to be the same way. But having a good note-taking system can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Digital tools like Notion, Evernote, even just a simple Google Doc can be really helpful.
Yeah.
The key is to find a system that works for you and that you can stick with.
So are we talking about like copying things verbatim? Are we summarizing?
Summarizing is really your best friend here.
Okay.
Not only does it force you to process the information more deeply, but it also helps you avoid accidentally plagiarizing anything.
Right.
And when you go back to your notes later, you'll be able to quickly grasp the main points without having to wade through a bunch of copied text.
Summarizing is something that I've always struggled with. I feel like I'm either not including enough information or I'm like rewriting the whole thing.
Yeah, it definitely takes practice.
Yeah.
But there are some techniques that can help. One of my favorites is the Cornell method.
Okay, I've heard of that. Tell me more.
Basically, you divide your page into 3 sections. One for key points, one for supporting details or examples, and then one for your own summaries and reflections.
Okay.
So let's say you're reading a case study about a successful video marketing campaign.
Yeah.
In the key points section, you might jot down things like target audience, video style, and key metrics.
Okay.
Then in the supporting details section, you'd add specific examples from the case study, like they targeted Gen Z with humorous TikTok videos, or they measured success through engagement and conversion rates.
Gotcha.
And then finally, in the summary section, you would synthesize those points into your own words. Maybe something like, this case study highlights the importance of understanding your target audience and aligning your video style and metrics accordingly.
So you're kind of creating like a mini analysis as you go.
Exactly. And that's going to help you remember the information so much better later on.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered defining our goals, making sure our sources are trustworthy, and then this idea of skimming and summarizing. Like, we are building an arsenal of research tools here.
We are, and it gets even better. There are tons of digital tools that can help us streamline this process even further.
Oh.
Let's talk about those after a quick break.
Okay, yeah. I am ready to unlock even more research superpowers. Let's do it. We'll be right back with more tips on efficient content research. Stay tuned. All right, so we're back and ready to dive even deeper into these tools that can help us be more efficient researchers.
Yeah, there are so many great tools out there.
You mentioned browser extensions.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any in particular that you think are like must-haves?
Well, I'm sure you've heard of things like Pocket or Instapaper.
Yeah.
Those are great for saving articles to read later, so you can kind of stay focused on what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
but you don't lose track of those interesting things that you come across.
It's like a curated reading list instead of just a million tabs open.
Exactly. Or a million bookmarks that you never look at again.
Yes.
Oh.
What about tools that actually help us summarize information? Because I feel like that's a huge time saver.
Oh, absolutely. Have you ever used Grammarly's research tools?
I have Grammarly, but I don't think I've explored the research side of things.
Yeah, it's incredibly useful for summarizing long or complex articles. You can highlight a section of text and it'll give you like a condensed version of the key points.
So it's almost like having an assistant go through and highlight all the important parts for you.
Exactly.
That's amazing, especially when you're dealing with like those really dense industry reports.
Oh, yeah, those can be tough to get through.
Okay, so you got to talk about AI. I feel like that's the big thing everyone's talking about right now.
Yeah,
Can tools like ChatGPT actually help us with research?
I think they can be really powerful tools if you use them strategically.
Okay.
I've used ChatGPT to help me draft summaries or to get a better understanding of a complex topic. But the key is to remember that it's a tool. It's not a replacement for your own critical thinking.
Right. We can't just take everything it says as gospel.
Exactly. You always want to double check the output against your reliable sources and use your own judgment to evaluate the information.
And so how can content creators use AI for research without falling into that trap of just blindly trusting it?
Well, let's say you're researching the latest trends in social media marketing.
Okay.
You could feed ChatGPT a few articles on the topic and ask it to create a concise summary of the key takeaways. Or if you're struggling to understand a particular concept, you could ask it to explain it in simpler terms or provide some relevant examples.
So it's like having a brainstorming partner who can help you process the information.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like the key is to find that balance between using the power of AI and maintaining our own critical thinking skills.
Absolutely. It's about using AI to enhance our own abilities, not to replace them.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We talked about defining our goals, finding trustworthy sources, and then all these techniques for actually processing the information efficiently.
Right. We've got like a whole toolkit now.
We do. So if someone's listening to this and they're feeling a little overwhelmed, what are like the top 3 things they should remember?
Okay, so first and foremost, define your research goals using that SMART framework.
Okay.
That specificity is going to help you stay focused and avoid those rabbit holes. Second, prioritize those reliable sources. Always double check the information, especially online, and be aware of potential biases.
Okay, so don't chase squirrels and make sure your sources are good. What's number 3?
Number 3 is all about efficient information processing.
Okay.
Learn to skim, effectively summarize what you read, and use those digital tools to organize your findings. That's going to save you so much time and energy in the long run.
So focus, verify, and streamline.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so we've got all these great tips, but how do we actually make them a part of our daily workflow?
I think the best approach is to start small and build consistency. Choose 1 or 2 techniques that resonate with you and try incorporating them into your next research project.
Yeah.
The more you practice, the easier it will become.
Like any skill, it takes time and repetition.
Exactly.
And I imagine the rewards are well worth the effort.
Oh, absolutely. You'll not only save time, but you'll also produce higher quality work.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a little something to think about. Yeah. Go back to the last time you had to do some serious research for a project.
Oh.
How could you have used these strategies to make that process easier? And what kind of impact could it have had on your final product?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people would be surprised by how much of a difference a few simple changes can make.
All right, so that's it for this deep dive into efficient content research. We hope you're feeling inspired to level up your research game, and we'll see you next time. We're back, and man, I feel like I just leveled up my research skills.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
amazing how much of a difference a few simple strategies can make.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we get so caught up in doing the actual research
Yeah.
that we forget to step back and think about how we can do it better.
Absolutely. It's easy to get stuck in those ruts.
Oh, to everyone listening out there, I hope you're feeling inspired to try out some of these tips
Yeah.
and to really make research a more enjoyable and productive part of your process.
And remember, research is an ongoing journey.
Right.
There's always something new to learn.
Right.
So stay curious, stay adaptable, and keep refining those skills.
I love that. That's it for this deep dive into efficient content research. We hope you found it valuable, and we'll see you next time.